Hello my fellow Ekko enjoyers. Today I will share 3 item builds for Ekko in Season 14 with you. Please note that I've only played around 25 games so far this season, so I'm more than certain that some of my opinions in this video will change over time. But a lot of people have been asking for a video like this, so I decided I will give you a quick overview now and most likely make a more in-depth guide in a few weeks. If you want to see that, be sure to leave a like on this video and let me know which item builds have been working the best for you. The first build I tried out was Rocket Belt into Storm Surge into either Rabadons or Lichbane. I'm still undecided which third item is better, but all I can say for now is that Lichbane instead of Rabadons felt surprisingly good. For the fourth item, the most common option in all of the builds today is gonna be Void Staff, so I will mostly highlight the 3 core items. The other 2 slots will be filled with Boots and the Dark Seal / Magi's. The upside of this build, especially with Lichbane, is that it is very cheap. Getting a Rocket Belt before 10 minutes consistently has a lot of value and makes Ekko somewhat of an early game jungler. With the Rocket Belt you also have an extra dash, which provides a whole extra layer of utility to Ekko's kit. The downside of this build is that the damage output in the mid game is noticeably lower and you will have less opportunities to get solo kills because of it. I will also have to mention here that I tested this build before the hotfix nerfs of Rocket Belt and Storm Surge, so it might feel even weaker now. That is not to say, however, that you can't get kills with this build or carry. You simply need to adapt your playstyle to getting less 100-0 one-shots. The room page that I believe makes the most sense to run with this build is either an Electrocute room page to double down on the early game snowball potential, or Hail of Blades because it seems to be the preferred keystone of most good Ekko players at the moment, even in the jungle. I have not yet tested Dark Harvest in Season 14, so if you have, then be sure to let me know how it has felt for you. The second build I've tried was inspired by Tabor, and it is one that does not include Rocket Belt, at least not in the first 3 items. This build goes Storm Surge into Lichbane into Rabadons. The clear upside of this build is the amount of burst damage you have available, as well as a lot of movement speed. Getting Storm Surge as a first item gives you much higher kill pressure than Rocket Belt, since it gives way more AP and flat magic pen, which is especially valuable in the early game. The second passive of Storm Surge can also help you snowball slightly, since you can get 30 extra gold on some kills. However, I have found that achieving this is not very consistent. The downside of this build is that it doesn't feature the extra dash of Rocket Belt, so your range is decreased and you have one less spell to be able to dodge enemy abilities. Proccing passive can also be a challenge with this build, and that is why you should always play this build with Hail of Blades. I've personally also tried out Transcendence in this build to make up for the lack of ability haste, but I don't know if I like it yet. As a side note, I think taking ability haste in your minor runes has more value than ever right now, since most builds at the moment only have one ability haste item before Rabadons. The final and most interesting build I'm showcasing today has been invented by Ekko the Nico and goes as follows: Nashor's into Shadowflame into Rabadons. I've only tried this build for 3 games so far, but Ekko the Nico has been having good success with it, so I decided to include it. My first impression of this build is that the biggest upside is the PvE gameplay. Shadowflame's new passive works on monsters, and Nashor's auto attacks also work with it. The overall damage output in PvP with this build has also felt pretty good. The clear downside here is the lack of Rocket Belt, as well as the fact that none of these items are very cheap. Another thing to consider with this build is that you don't have a lot of movement speed compared to other builds, so you probably need to go for Blue Smite instead of Red Smite, which has been my preferred choice recently. Also, this build is clearly focused around auto-attacking the enemies a lot, which might not always be possible or optimal depending on the enemy comp. Ekko the Nico has been running this build exclusively with this Electrocute room page. I assume the reason for this is to use the Electrocute burst to get the enemies below 35% health as fast as possible. Although, I could also see both Hail of Blades and Dark Harvest being good with this room page. Hail of Blades has the clear synergy with Nashor's, and Dark Harvest is doubling down on the below 35% HP crits. This setup definitely has an interesting thought process behind it, and I believe it is very viable if you adapt your playstyle to it. Now I will give you some conclusions on which of these builds is my favorite. As I said, I've not played with the post-nerf Storm Surge yet, but I still believe that the second build is my favorite for now. It definitely hurts a bit to play without Rocket Belt, since I believe Rocket Belt is a big part of Ekko's skill expression, but the games with the second build were the ones where I felt strongest. However, I will add here that in some of these games I really regretted not buying Rocket Belt, so most likely it is best to consider before the game how much you need it and then decide which item build you should choose. If you found this video helpful, be sure to leave a like and stay tuned for more Season 14 content. Thanks for watching.